So I hope everyone has understand conceptual wise what is the these are four concepts of the object oriented principles. And today we go into the little bit deeper into these concepts and how we are going to implement all these concepts. Yesterday we talked about pass by value and pass by reference. I hope everyone are pretty clear about this. Next is the uh, recursion. Recursion is a process like to how we can call a method by call itself is a call a recursion mechanism. A class can contain a variables, a class can contain a methods. What will happen? A method can call another method. Is it possible? Yes, a method can call another method. A function can call another function. What will happen if a method can call a method itself, their own method? It become a loop process, or it can be a recursion process, which is absolutely possible in Java. That is where I'm providing this an example, simple example of recursion. So do you think we need this? There are some cases where uh, some of the cases in the loop mechanism, if we want to implement certain functionalities, we might need to use a recursion process to continuously calling the same function again and again by itself, loop mechanism. Whatever I am teaching, pass by value, pass by reference, and recursion, and today I'm going to tell a lot of things. All are the concepts of Java object-oriented programming. When the need comes for you to develop a code, then you will have a tools. Like an example yesterday, when you want to put a nail into the wall, you need a hammer as a tool. So these things are techniques and tools I'm teaching to every day so that you people can writing a code, you can think, hey, can I use a recursion here? Can I use a pass by value? Can I use the pass by reference? You need to think in your brain so that you can write a right code accordingly to meet the functionality, how you want to develop the code. In this example, if you see that simple class example of recursion, class factorial. This is a recursive method. Int fact, taking input variable int is equal to n, and in the method also we can define a variables int result. If n minus 1 returns 1, result minus fact n minus 1 into multiply by n, result returns result finally. So the result variable is written here. The result variable is being if is equal if n minus 1 return 1. So we implemented a certain functionality in this factorial class. We created another class called recursion. So we created object of the factorial class f is equal to new factorial. This is a default constructor, which I mentioned that every class have a default constructor. You don't need to write a default constructor, but a class will have a default constructor. A class can contain a parameters constructor also. If you want to invoke, you need to specially call that in constructor. But right now, it is calling a default constructor of factorial class. Factorial of 3 is f is equal to fact 3. We are passing it. We pass f is equal to 3. What is factorial of 3 is 6. It is printed. So here again, within the method, if n minus 1 returns 1, result is equal to, again it is calling a same method one more time. From the method fact, it is calling one more fact. You see here, we created object.fact to call this class, but this class, a fact method is local to this class. There is no object created here. We are calling a fact method within a fact method. It means that the control comes here and comes here. It won't come to next line. Again, it goes to back again. Again, it executes. Again, it comes to here. Again, it executes. So like the way, this is an example I'm giving. all I'm trying to say that for simplicity, assuming that we remove this line and we can call fact is equal to fact. You can put any method, whatever the method you want. You can call a recursion, call a method is calling by itself is called the recursion as a simple word. The second concept is the method overloading. So remember a polymorphism as an OOPS principle. Poly means many forms we talked about. A method overloading allows multiple methods have the same name, but a different argument list within the same class. Method overloading is a compile time polymorphism. There's two types of polymorphism: compile time and runtime. Means that compile time means while writing the code, we know that how this function is going to work, how this method is going to work. Runtime polymorphism is we don't know how this method will work until unless we execute the code. I talk about this runtime polymorphism in the next subsequent classes. So what is the method overloading? There are the two concepts, method overloading and method overriding. Overriding. I'm not talking about overriding here. I'm talking about overloading. So in this class, if you see here, a class overload demo, we have a method called test, and it is simply printing a one system.out.println. I can define one more method with a test int is equal to a. So the signature is same and the return type is same. Only the difference is that the number of parameter here is 0, here is 1. I can have a multiple number of parameters. Maybe I can define one more method, void test, int is equal to a, string is equal to s, int is equal to b. So it means the 3 parameters I can define. Why do you need this kind of functionality is in the real-time scenarios, there are certain cases. It will keep on changing based on the input parameter. So we need to have such kind of a methods we will be writing in the code. It does the same functionality, but the real-time scenarios are different. So what is an example here? Take an example of, I will go back to the, again, in a WhatsApp example I have mentioned to you in the past. When you are sending a message to someone, what kind of message you send? You send a text message you're sending, and you send a picture, photos you are sending, and also you are able to send videos, and in the WhatsApp you can share files also, documents. You see that? Have you tried to share a Word document in the WhatsApp or PDF document? It is possible. It means that you are sending a message to your friend or your family members. Sometimes you write a text. Sometimes you send a picture if you're taking a picture. Sometimes you send a small video clip. Sometimes you send a file also. All are different. Text is a simple string. A picture is a different kind of a data format, picture. And video is a combination of many pictures, video file, MP3 file. If it is sending a picture, it is a JPEG, PNG formats. When you are sending a file, you are sending a Word document, you can send a text file, you can send a PDF document. You see that the formats are different. Suppose someone has to write a class such a way that WhatsApp message, send message, take a string as input parameter. One more message, send message, take input parameter is a picture. One more message, send message, same type send, but input parameter is file. You see that the functionality what you are doing in the real world is same, but the input you are sending in the message, you are sending a message always. The sending a message inside is different. If you want to implement such kind of a functionalities, so you need to implement like same method signature and number of parameters or keep on changing it. I will pause here for any questions or confusions the way it has been explained. So
In class overloading, we can add more rights on void test int or void test string like that.
yes, you can add whatever the parameter. There is no difference between writing a normal method, like suppose you test one, right? Both are different name, test and test underscore Kalyan, right? You are you are allowing a Java is allowing you to write like that, right?
Yes, sir.
Still it allows to write a same naming convention, same name, test and test, but you would differentiate by passing a number of parameters, or you can differentiate by what is the return type also. Suppose instead of a void, I can put a int, return type is int, test, I can put a no parameter also. This method is different from here. If you see here, example here, void test int a and b, it is taking void. Void means you know that method will not return any output back, is called void. Voiding the transaction. Void the check. Use the void the check, right? You cancel the check. It means the check is not valid. Void means nothing. Void means this method will not return anything. So that is the reason there is no return statement. Whenever the method returns something, you always need to keep a return keyword. In the void, there is no return keyword. That is the difference between the void and a method which is not returning anything. So coming back to our concept, in this method, void test int a and int b, it is taking two parameters. And again, test one more method, overloaded this test for a double parameter. See, the test is equal to, it is taking a double parameter as a data type and also returning a double. The method name is same, the return type is different, and input parameters are different. So when you call this class overload, public static void main string args, and a created object of this class ob overload demo and ob.test I call, it calls this one ob.test, I call this guy, and ob.test I have called this person, and result is equal to ob.test, I am calling a double parameter 123.25. I'm calling this person also, this test. So how many methods we have? Test, 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 test. All are test. This is the void, no parameter. This is the void with one parameter. This is a void with two parameters. This is a return type and one parameter. Naming conventions are same. Signatures are same. The parameter generates the following output. So one, it returns 10. So it is calling a different test. The compiler, a runtime environment of Java, is not confused. It understands ob.test. It is going to here, no parameter. ob means object. ob.text 10. It is calling this file. So it is printing 10. ob test 1020. It is calling this one. It is printing A and B. This is how the method overloading will work. Why do you want to use it? I have given example of a WhatsApp messaging, how you send a messages in the real world. We can use certain kind of a functionality for a method overloading. Do you want to think any other real-time scenarios which you are doing something like this? Do you want to think Are you doing a method overloading in the real life also?
Like sending mails, sir.
Sending mails. You send mail with a simple body. You send mail with the attachments, right?
Yes, sir.
The attachment can be different, right? So in that case, there will be a method called send email. I will give a different example. You send an email, which is a good thing. What you said is, Kalyan, send email. When you are sending email, you write to your friend. You put his to email address, right? And you
Yes,
put a
sir.
body subject of the email, and you write a body, right? Generally, you do like this. And sometimes you send an email, assuming that you are sending email to Sham. You put a CC list. Sham is a to list. CC, you put a Sonia or CC list, and you write the same subject, same body. It means that now you are sending to me as a Sham to list and CCing Sonia. Means two parameters changing, right? And you send an email to Sham and CC Sonia, and you put a BCC, you know BCC, right? Functionality. You send it to Kiran and Ravi Teja. BCC means the people don't know that whom he sent the mail. Have you tried BCC? I'm assuming that. So what happened? You are still sending email. How many parameter? Two list. In the two list, I can keep 10 people also. CC list, I can keep 10 emails also. BCC list, I can keep another 10 email address. And subject is same of the email and body is same. So in your programming, you need to decide send email parameter, input parameters is body and subject and to list. Send email body, subject, to list, CC list parameters. Send email body, subject, to list, CC list, and BCC list. Parameters are changed. But in the send email, what is the common functionality is sending an email. So you take the send email example. I want to spend some time here, deep dive into the things. How do you write a code? In the send email, what is the common functionalities? Common functionalities is delivering a message is a common functionality. You write that different function. Delivery message, you write different function. It doesn't matter, you need to deliver it. Delivering to to list, CC list, BCC list, all are same. So you write a one more method called delivery email, and you write one more couple of methods called send email with the to list, send email with the BCC list, send email with CC list. So all these methods need to call delivery method. Delivery method is common to everyone. It doesn't matter whether you are a to list, CC list, BCC list, you need to deliver it. So you write the delivery functionality in a separate method or function or a class. But you write a, instead of a test, send email, send email, send email, all these methods called a common method called delivery email. So the reusability of the code, delivery email is written as a one function, and send email is only taking a email address and finally calling a delivery email. Delivery email is does actually delivering the email. How the code has been organized, reused in this direction. We are writing one method, which is the delivery email, but send email, you have multiple overloaded, but everyone are calling a one functionality. I will pause here. This is very important to you. Everyone, I want everyone to understand this. How you write the code. Feel free to ask questions. You understand the concept of overloading?
Yes, sir.
The next another concept is a static keyword. We know that we have used static keyword a lot, but we have not get into deeper into the static keyword. We can use this static keyword, one for variable, we can use it. We can use it for the method, and you can use it for the class also. So the static keyword will help you to, there is a lot of advantages for using a static keyword in the programming. And there is one more called static blocks also. I have not talked about static blocks. So static keyword, as I mentioned that here, we can use these static blocks. I will explain what is static blocks. Static blocks is like a method, but different concept. And you can use this to variables, publics. Generally, you write int is equal to age. Before int, you can put a static int is equal to age. Whenever you put a static, it means that the int a, even though you create 10 objects, it holds only one value. It is not an instance variable, it is become a class variable. You know what is the difference between class variable and instance variable? Instance variable means every object has a copy of the variable. Int, suppose string, employee name for employee class. I created object dot employee name is equal to Sham. Object 2 dot employee name is equal to Sonia. Object 3 dot employee name is equal to Kalyan. I can define a different copies of the same variable when you create an object. Whenever you define a static to a variable, if you define employee is equal to Sham, employee name is equal to Sham, even you create 20 objects, the name always stays same. Any object 1 calls employee name, it will return Sham. Object 2, it calls Sham. Object 3, it calls Sham. Why do you need this kind of static keyword? Generally, if you take an example of bank transfer, you send a money to your friends in the bank transfer. You keep on sending money to your bank transfer, and you are receiving a money from another bank, from your friends also, or phone pay, you are doing it, a lot of things you are doing it. What is the common thing? Your account number and your routing number, it never changes for you. So you don't need to change that variable every time. Account number is standard always for your bank account. You can keep them as a kind of a static variable. You know that this variable will not change, but we need to have one value to be assigned. One value to be assigned, that value is going to stay forever. If you know that while writing a program, you keep it as a static. And this variable need to be shared by everyone. Same copy need to be shared, then you can use a static. Same applies to methods also, static methods. Whenever you define a static method, you no need to create an object to call the method. You can call class name dot method name. It will works. So here example here, static test. So you see the static variable, static int a is equal to 10 I define. Static int b, I have not initialized. Here I have initialized 10, I have not initialized here. Because since it is I put in the class level. Private static string s is equal to Java static variable. I define one more string. And this is the static block. Whenever you need to write a static, every class can contain one static block. I will tell what is the advantage of static blocks. System.out.println static block initialize b is equal to a into 4. This value of b I have defined as a into 4. B become 40 now. Static block initialized and b is equal to 40. And I have written a method called static method void, but I use a word called static. This is static method. So public static void main. So whenever you run a class, which is the first line of code will be executed here? We told that public static void main will be executed. It will come into this method first. This is what I have been taught so far. Public static void main is the entry point to your program. And first line will be executed whatever is written in this class, in this method. This method is different from this method. You see that this method doesn't have a this is a main method and this is a non-main methods. This is the main method given by Java default. This one also have a static. This one also have a void, and it is taking arguments, different arguments, string args, array. So as I mentioned that whenever you invoke, this is the being invoked first. If the class has a static block, this is not going to invoke first. This is going to invoke first. This will load first, then comes to here. So here, if you see that I have executed this code, whenever I run this Java static test, so first invoked here is this one, static block initialized. It invoked this one, not this line. Should be invoked from main, right? But it is not invoked. It will invoke first. Static blocks generally used to initialize the class. Generally, we can use the constructor also initialize the class. And another way of initializing the class is the static blocks. Static blocks will not take in a parameters. Constructor will take a parameters. This is the difference of initializing a class. You can initialize the class using a constructor, but constructor you can pass a parameters. Static blocks will not take a parameter, but we can initialize the class first. Whenever you invoke a Java class, the first thing is invoked is the constructor. The second is invoked is the static blocks, if you have any static blocks from the main method. First is the main method, definitely, because from the main method only we create an objects. Suppose here static, public static void main, I created object, static object. So first this is invoked, then it goes static block. But in this case, it invokes the static blocks first, then it goes to the next line of the code, main method. So here static block is initialized, and it went to main, and variable of a is equal to 10, variable of b is equal to 40, and then we have I have created object static test dot static nested test. I will explain this why I have done like this. Static object dot show. Then it called the show method and printed the variable called a static variable. Here you see that object creation is a little bit different here, because I can define a static keyword to the class also, another class. Whenever I define a static keyword to class, that static class should be always within a main class. This class is open here, this class is closed here, but the class is within the class. This is called a nested class, or it called as a inner classes also. So whenever you want to invoke this object, this show method, static test dot static nested class object creation is equal to new static test dot static nested class. You create an object like this. Generally, you know that creating an object is static test object name is equal to new static test and parenthesis open, parenthesis closed, and semicolon. But when you have a nested class means class within a class, which should be defined as a static. If you want to create an object for this, you need to follow this kind of a syntax. So that is the reason now this object, static object, can access this guy, can access this person also. So why do you need to create this kind of classes? Is suppose you are writing a big functionality, and take an example of your any like banking sector, right? You are writing some code for the banking sector. You need to define a very tiny class. It does only small function method. You don't need to create another file for it. Like, whenever you save this file, static test.java only, you save it as a static test.java. You don't save it as a static nested class.java. You don't need to save. So you will still save as a static test.java, but you want to write a small tiny class to make it logically arrange the code. The class helps to organize your code. I told you, right? Class helps to organize the code and reuse the code. So whenever we want to write a small tiny class which is directly related to this class, no one are going to use it. You can write some small classes like this. This is another tool, a functionality, a feature a Java has provided to the programmers to write a code such a way. Do you think a lot of developers write it? In the real scenario, in the real world, very few cases we write, because people does it, define this class in the outside, and they use it to make it simplicity point of view. But writing this will help you to decreases the number of lines of the code also. And this one is tightly communicate each other, because this object can access this method, and this method also it is accessing. Object is same, even though it is different class. So as I mentioned, static keyword, we can use it for static keyword for multiple ways. We can use for static blocks, we can use it for variables, we can use it for methods, and we can use it for classes. So whenever you use the static keyword to block, the behavior is different. When you use it for variable, the behavior is different. When you use it for method, the behavior is different. When you use it for class, the behavior is different. I will pause here for any questions from anyone.
Sir, for an example, while we open an app in our phone, like it's asked for a password.
Yeah.
Does that come as an example, sir? Does that count?
For the static keyword, you mean to say?
Yes, sir.
The password, right?
Yes, sir. If we
Uh,
disable
sta-
ask before password while entering the app.
Whenever you log in your Gmail, right?
Yeah.
Password will not be a right example. When you log into Gmail, you go to the inbox and you go to the settings, and you go to the calendar. You see, you navigate to multiple pages in the Gmail, right?
Yes, sir.
On the top, you see that your email address and name will be always showing to you. It never changes. You notice that your email address,
Yes,
Kalyan,
sir.
or me logged in email address is Sham. Who logs in, you see that. So what happened when you log in first time, you enter your user ID password, Gmail, and it goes to database, validate, is it Kalyan password is right? Assuming that it is right, it validates. And you don't enter the complete email address. Suppose your email address kalyan.abc@gmail.com. You enter kalyan.abc. You don't enter at Gmail because you are already in Gmail, right? So the variable, static variable being initialized there as a kalyan.abc, that variable always is visible on your web page on the top right corner somewhere. It never changes. Even though you navigate to the multiple pages in your screen, each page is different for you. Sometimes you check your inbox. Sometimes you go to the inbox social. Sometimes you go to the inbox like, junk folders and spam folders. You go to the trash folder and you go to the calendar, you go to setting, but that is not changing it, right? Static. You always keep that as a variable. One time you initialize it and stays forever. Memory
So,
usage will be less.
yes. So
You need
static
that
means it will be always there.
always, like one copy exists.
Like,
One
oh,
copy.
okay, sir.
Only one copy exists. At any given time, one copy. Means variable can hold each if it is instance variable can contain the multiple copies for each object, right?
Yes, sir.
But static is only one copy. If you
Static
define
block.
something, yeah. If you define one thing for static variable value, that value stays until you change the value. If you change the value, again that value stays. I define a static variable name. I defined as a Kalyan first. I can change it to from Kalyan to Sham, but it stays only Sham. I change from name Sham to Sonia. It stays Sonia. You can create 100 objects to the class. Name always holds Sonia because now Sonia is the name. You created the 200 object for the class and you changed it from name from Sonia to Ravi Teja. All other rest of the 200 objects will have a name is equal to Ravi Teja. You understand or confusion here?
Yes, sir.
Generally, object dot name is equal to you put Kalyan. Object 2 dot name is equal to Sonia. Object 3 dot name is equal to Sham. So whenever I pull object 3 dot name, I get a Sham. Object 2 dot name is equal to Sonia. Object 1 dot name is equal to Kalyan. You get different names for each
Yes,
object.
sir.
But in the static, if you define that name is equal to static, I created object 1, object 2, object 3. Object 1 name is equal to, I put Kalyan. Object 2 dot name is equal to Sonia, name is equal to Sonia. Object 3 dot name is equal to Sham. I defined as Sham. Now latest is Sham. Now if you go to object 1 or name, even though you put a Kalyan, now it has been changed to Sham. You get a Sham still.
Okay,
Means
sir.
that
I understood.
whenever you define a static variable, one copy will exist in the system. That is the here int a. Example of name I told int a. One copy exists for the static test. Even though you for the static test, you create 100 objects. A is equal to 10. Object 1 dot a 10. Object 2 dot a 10. Everything will be stays 10 only until unless object 200 created for the static test 200 object test 200 dot a is equal to you put like 1000. All the objects are going to having a whatever the value like 2000s whatever it is stays for everyone. That is the reason static keyword used to share the same variable. It shares the same variable. And also it is a memory management. It won't use the lot of memory because it holds only one value. That's how we use the static keyword whenever you want to use it a variable. Blocks are different. To initialize something before a class starts, you want to do some initialization, right? Whenever you are on the computer, it try to initialize. Whenever you on the mobile phone, it try to initialize. You need to do certain tasks before the system should be up and running for you, right? If a class needs such a kind of functionality to boot up something, you use the static blocks, you write all the installation mechanism. Whenever you're installing software, updating a software, progress 10, progress 20, progress 30, progress 100, right? Finally, you see that kind of progressive bar when installing a software. So those kind of an progress, showing the progress or booting up initialization in your computer or your mobile phone, or even your, if you on switch on a microwave or something like electronic devices, those kind of booting operations we write in this static blocks. It does a lot of work behind the scene. Once everything is executed, hey, now I am ready to use a TV. When you switch on the TV, it takes some time to come up. That kind of functionality you want to write, you use the static blocks to installation purpose. I hope you are clear here now, everyone.
Yes, sir. I'm clear.
I'm going to the next one is the final keyword. So final keyword is very simple to understand. You generally use your in your day-to-day, hey, this is the final, man. You always say, this is the final, my words are final. I'm not going to change. You always say that final means final. We cannot change them. That is the meaning. Real world of final. This is the final offer. This is the final deadline for any task. So once you pass the deadline, it will not be changed. Same thing it has applied here. Whenever you define a variable is a final keyword, it means that the value cannot be changed. I told you static, at least we can change a variable, but holds only one. But final is, if I define a final int name is equal to Sham, I define initialize one time. Even if I change the name is equal to Sonia, name is equal to Ravi Teja, it will not work. You already define one time a final variable, that will be all set. If I apply the final keyword to method, a method cannot be overridden. I will talk about overridden. What does it mean by overridden? I told about overloading, overridden. I will tell you in the next class. We cannot override the method if it defines. Means that because override means overriding means you are changing again the method also. Like the variable, you will change it. The method also can be changed. The implementation of method also can be changed over the period of time. That process can be stopped when you define a method is equal to a final method has been given to the method. Same thing class. When a class is defined as final, it cannot be create a subclass for it. I will talk about a subclass concept in the next slides are there. But a class, you define a class is equal to A. You define a final class is equal to A. You cannot change it. Suppose you say that final static int salary is equal to 1000. Final static string name is equal to Java. Static int age equal to 50. So I printed final salary, final name, age is equal to 60. I change age equal to 60. If age salary is equal to 2000, it looks to be same for you. Hey, what I'm doing here? I have initialized salary is equal to 1000. I'm defining now salary is equal to 2000. It is a valid statement. It should work. But this code will not work because we use a final. When you compile this class, Java C, final test example.java, it shows an error, cannot assign a value to final variable salary. This is the problem, error 2000. This is failed, but this is successful because there is no final keyword here. I'm not able to compile. A compiler has detected, hey, there is a grammatical mistake in the code. That is the reason it detected and showing you compile time error at line number 14. The error is cannot assign a value to final variable salary. And this is the salary is equal to 2000. This is the where the problem is there. That's where it is showing a problem. I hope this is clear to you, everyone. The next concept is the nested classes and inner classes. In Java, it is possible to define a class in another class. That's called a nested class. We talked about static classes just now, static keyword, right? You have defined a class A, and within a class, you can write one more class called B inside it. So B is a nested class. So two categories of nested classes. So static nested classes and inner classes. If whenever you define a static keyword in front of the class, that become a static nested classes. We talked about just now static keyword. If you don't define a static keyword in front of the class, even though it is nested, it is called inner classes. Why we need this kind of things is right to, as I mentioned, logically group the code, and it increases the encapsulation. Encapsulation means hiding a data in such a way, an organizable way, hide the data and only use it what is needed. So generally the nested classes look like outer class and nested class and the bracket open close and top bracket close main class. This is called the nested classes. If you put a static here keyword, it becomes a static nested class. If you don't keep a static keyword, it becomes inner class. They call it inner class. When you save this class, you save it as the outer class.java. You don't save it as a nested class.java because this is the class is the main. When you compile also, you compile as outer class.java. You don't compile as a nested class.java because whenever you compile outer class.java, it compiles internally here also. Whenever you want to create an object for the nested class, this is the syntax. Outer class dot nested class object is equal to new outer class dot nested class. This is how we need to create an object for this nested class. You still can create a outer class object also. Outer class object is equal to new outer class. Whenever you create outer class object, this outer class cannot see methods, variables within the nested class. But nested class can see the methods and variables within the class, also outside of the class. This object have access to all the methods variables here and all the methods and variables in the outer class also is possible. So if you see here, static class, nested class and inner class, right? So I define here outer class and static member outer X, outer Y as instance variable, and another variable private member, private and definite private and static. And I have a static class, static nested class. Outer class, this is a different class. A void display. I have void display. So here I'm able to access the outer X. I'm able to access the outer private also. And here I'm trying to access the outer Y. outer y will not work because in the static nested classes, everything you are accessing here should be static from the outer class. If the outer class, any one of the member variable is not a non-static, you cannot access them. Directly, we cannot access them. We can access them by creating an object. Outer class object is equal to new outer class is equal to outer dot outer x. You can access like that way. The reason you are not able to access is because outer y is not a static, it is instant variable, means that, as I mentioned, that static variable will hold only one value at any given time. I told you in the previous concept. The reason it is able to access means that doesn't matter how many objects you create for outer class, a static variable always hold one value. That is the reason it is directly able to access the variable. You can change it to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, doesn't matter. It only holds one value always. That is the reason we are able to access these two things. But outer y is not a static variable. It is instance variable. The objects of the class can have a different copies of this object, different copies. Outer y will have different copies. Each object will have their own value. That is the reason you are not able to access like this, but you are able to access with an object creation. But rest of thing, static class can access everything from the outer class. All are static, can able to access directly. So when we call this class, you create an object outer class dot static nested class, object new. Again, you call this constructor, default constructor you're calling. This you call the default constructor of the outer class and nested class. We don't need to write a default constructor, and you call the display, nested class dot display. You try to print this, but this variable we commented out, then it will able to display the values. Outer x is equal to show 10, outer y is equal to outer private is going to display 30, but here outer y dot y is equal to define 20. So it prints 20, 30 and 20. Then if you go to the non-static nested classes, non-static nested class called inner classes. So the difference here is that you see that there is a static keyword here, and here is a no static keyword here. But the variables of outer class, there is no change. Static int outer x is equal to 10. Instant variable, this is outer y is equal to 20. A private member, private int private member is equal to 30. So here I define like this. So can I access a static member of outer class? Yes. Outer class, outer x is equal to, you are able to access directly. Can also create a non-static member of outer class. Outer y also you are able to access it. And also you are able to access the outer private also. Private variable also you are able to access. So in this case, you are able to access everything, but you need to create an object to execute these things, then it will display like this. So the simple solution to understand is that the nested classes, static nested classes, can only access the static members. Inner classes, which is called non-static nested classes, can access every variable from the outer class. And it can be share the same Java file name. And generally we use this kind of things for the reusable of the code, encapsulation, better organization of the code, we develop like these classes. This is the kind of a concept which we are trying to developed in Java that will help for your understanding.